Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning. I am really pleased to be able to have Tom Ferrell, the Mayor of Sequim, and Matt Huish, the Sequim's new city manager, join us today to talk about their backgrounds and also a little bit about what they would like to focus on outside of the norm that city managers and city mayors always work on regarding economic development and businesses. So thank you so much for joining us. And just some housekeeping items. If you put yourself on mute, that would be terrific. And this is being recorded, so we will have it on our website later on today. If you have any questions, if you want to raise your hand, I will go ahead and call on you. We like this to be fairly interactive. I don't think Tom or Matt have any slides. So will be, if you have questions about certain topics that they're discussing, or maybe a topic that they're not, go ahead and raise your hand, or you can put it in the chat. If you'd like me to answer the question for you, you can state that in the chat and I'll go ahead and ask the question. So with that, thank you very much for joining us. And I suppose we should let Tom begin. Mayor Ferrell. And congratulations on your selection, Mayor Ferrell.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Tom Ferrell. I've been in Sequim for about 5 years and on council for 2 years. And background is Air Force officer, flying airplanes around. After that, closing military bases. And then after that, I worked for an aerospace company and started my own company after that. Long story short, I followed my grandkids up here. They're over in Bothell. My son works for Boeing. So I was talking to Colleen earlier.
Okay, hold on just a second.
She thought it would be helpful to mention that Sequim has a what they call a weak mayor system versus a strong mayor system. And that doesn't mean I'm weak. It just means that we depend on the city manager to run the place. And I am one of 7 votes, and I'm very, very, very much into the fact that I am one of 7 votes. I will not speak for the council on specifics. It will be my opinion when you hear it. So I just want everyone to understand that, please. Other than that, I love golf, and I love my grandkids, and that's it.
This is going to be a short meeting if that's all you got, Tom.
I'm not a big talker, so don't. And by the way, I'm not a politician either.
Yeah, I say the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
I just really love what the port does and the port's mission.
There you go.
So, but you do also have a background in economic development and development in particular. What is that about? Tell us a little bit about it.
If we were having a beer, I could talk for an hour and give you some good stories, but I have a strong economic development background. In between all those jobs, I was actually buying up land in Mexico for development. And I was also the economic development director for the Sacramento Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce. In that role, I started the World Trade Center. I shouldn't say the staff started the World Trade Center franchise associated with New York. And so that is now, I believe, the Northern California World Trade Center. And so we increased international trade. It was a membership organization. We had trade missions, many to Japan. And so a strong economic development attitude. And that attitude prevails to this moment, speaking for myself, that while we're struggling for people to work and we're struggling for affordable housing, however that's defined, I still believe that we need to create good paying jobs here that can create economic development and rollover and so on for the entire society here. So that's about it.
Great, thanks. So kind of a two-pronged question here. what would you say is Sequim's, the city government's biggest issue? Or maybe you want to characterize that as what is Sequim's biggest issue? And then what would you like to see in your term? If you could have a goal that you could actually try to accomplish, what would that be?
I think the first one's probably about the same in every city right now. So the second one is I'd like to bring some really good paying jobs to this area. I understand and respect the region for people that have lived here a time, and I'm not trying to be an upstart from California to come in here, but we have some sites where it would sure be nice to have some good, solid, clean industry and other development, as you and I have talked about on occasion, Colleen. So that would be ideal. What I really want to accomplish other than that as the mayor is to really make the citizens understand that we are 7 individuals and we have different attitudes and so on towards economic development, social issues, and so on. And that system needs to work. So during my 2 years, or at least my first year, I want that to get back to common sense and looking at reality of things and just using analysis to understand where we're going. And that would be my goal.
Terrific. Thanks, Tom. Okay, I'll take you up the hot seat and let Matt come on and join us and share a little bit about his background, and then also, you know, what he'd like to potentially work on. He's of course more staff oriented rather than policy, and so takes the lead of the council. But what, and you haven't been on that long, of course, but what would you like to see so far that you've gleaned?
Well, thank you. And thank all of you for signing on. I hope I can add some value to your morning and to this call. So I told Colleen, I'm so new that if you have me on, I can't talk a lot about the city issues because I'm still meeting people and like, you know, a month into this full time. So, but I can tell you a little bit about myself. I can tell you that I really appreciate working with Mayor Ferrell. You know, he's used to running companies. He's used to a board of directors that doesn't run the company, but that gives, you know, policy direction and networks, uses their network to help move the companies forward. So we are very aligned, I think, and understand, you know, swimming lanes. Since this is an economic development call, I guess I'll try to bend more of my comments around that. I actually grew up in Tacoma and graduated from University of Puget Sound there as well, and then started a business like within, I don't know, 3 or 4 months after graduating. All my classmates said, "Are you crazy?" And it's like, well, I got 2 kids, I got to do something and control my destiny here. So I get entrepreneurism. I ran that business for 12 years and then got connected to a startup out of Nashville. And in 5 years, we built that from, we had 5 million in venture capital out of New York. And anyway, we sold that for 75 million 5 years later. So, you know, I've done the corporate kind of public world. I worked for Fortune 500 in Birmingham, Alabama, and flew around on corporate jets. So I've done the suit thing and, you know, being in different markets, different days. So, and then I've also done university work, meaning it's more public than private, of course, but it was in healthcare, and healthcare is all about process improvement and research and how to do things smarter and better, faster and cheaper. And so that you know, that's a nice environment to, you don't practice medicine today the same as 5 years ago, or you get sued. So, you know, that's entrepreneurism and economic development as well, really constant process improvement. So I love this group. You know, I love what Colleen is trying to do on the peninsula and support it completely. What else can I tell you? I'm a huge fan of technology. because I've spent so much time on the private side, now that I'm on the public side, it's been frustrating to me, not here, but in my previous role, to see the gap that exists in public entities. Not all, but historically, I think it's probably the last industry to modernize or to digitize and kind of push themselves through a transformation. Private, of course, had to do that to stay competitive and to keep the margins. Public doesn't really have margins like that they have to be accountable for to keep their doors open. So, or their shareholders happy. So anyway, but that still doesn't give the public sector an excuse not to provide the same level of service, customer service, technology, centric. And so I really hope to do that in Sequim. We're working already with, I've only been here a month or two, but working on looking at all of our processes and figuring out why is that not digitized, and wouldn't that make it much more customer centric for our residents and our businesses if they didn't have to drive over, walk in, park, blah blah blah. The manual systems and stuff just is kind of archaic when we live in a world of Amazon and everything's on our phones and done immediately. So anyway, I've over talked already.
No, that's great. We got a whole hour. We got 47 minutes left, so.
Wind me up.
So I see Colleen Robinson has a question. Colleen.
Good morning, Mayor Ferrell and City Manager Houston. Welcome to your new positions in Sequim. Hewitt.
Yeah, how do you pronounce your last name?
Yeah,
it's H-U and then ish, right? Like 9-ish or Hugh-ish, but yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay. Now that we have that cleared up.
Sorry.
That's okay. I represent Habitat for Humanity. So of course, my question is going to be about affordable housing and workforce housing. So it's really to both of you, and I am asking your opinions, obviously not policy. Mayor Ferrell, you spoke about wanting to grow economic development, which is really difficult if people can't find housing. I know that our new city manager struggled with finding housing when he moved here and taking his new position. So our zoning in city of Sequim is also a bit archaic in single family homes only. And that lack of ability to build density is a struggle to get enough housing to meet the need for our community. So your thoughts on housing and affordable housing. Thank you.
And I'll take that first. I said before, I think every city in America has this problem. Every community has this problem. And I always argue with folks about the fact that the market will eventually take care of the housing situation. That might take 20, 30, 40 years to resolve the housing issue with a wonderful organization like yours. To me, it's baffling how we can build enough units. So I'm always, from my economic development experience, it's like these numbers have to work. And unless you have, in my opinion, this is Tom Ferrell, not the council, somehow magically to come up with enough units where we can solve this problem in a few years is baffling to me. So I don't know, I don't have a clear answer. I know when I talked to the council about this before, and by the way, I was on the planning commission before that, it was like, I see this as a bunch of little fixes towards helping the problem. And perhaps you can help me understand how we could ever resolve this issue in a more expedient manner. So that's my attitude on the situation.
I'll just, throw in my 2 cents. I support, of course, everything you've just heard. Colleen and I have had a conversation. I love your model, right? Your model provides equity in the project, in the home ownership. You help them get in, but then they're supposed to help build the project or contribute to it in some way. And then the longer they stay and the more they take care of it, the more there's a scale of equity that so it's the only way that really, something's going to be sustainable. So I think, a lot of talk about the missing middle and workforce housing and all that, which is a different thing than the homeless completely, so that's another conversation. But But I've seen some, like Tom said, every community is dealing with housing issues right now. And it really is that missing middle. Like, how do we, and I've seen some really nice models where developers are building condos and stuff. This is in more bigger, metropolitan areas, but they're doing it through a cost structure that it's a low cost structure, so that, and people have ownership in their it's a condo kind of thing, but for a really reasonable price. And so it equals to renting, and there's equity in it. So in 3 years, when they're done with their school or with their families, starting to have kids or something, they've got something to sell. So I don't know the answer, but I appreciate your model and what you're trying to do to bring some workforce housing to our market. So,
Colleen, if I can just ask a follow-up question. So I guess specifically is, what would be my best way to advocate for zoning change so that we're not just building single family homes within Sequim city limits? And Mayor Ferrell, Habitat just bought almost 5 acres of property within Sequim city limits that we hope to develop 40 homes, 40 workforce housing homes for the people that are serving our community, the hospitality workers, the bus drivers, the paraeducators. Those are the families we want to serve. So how can I best advocate for changing the zoning?
I'm assuming those are attached. Yeah.
They would be fourplexes, probably.
Sure. And I think I read some of your information before. So first of all, you're asking me, although you didn't say this, am I an advocate for going away from single family houses as a zoning situation? And my answer back to you is, I'm one person and it makes sense to me. How we go about that process, I will turn over to Mr. City Manager and say, how do we look at this and how do we move? One thing I think where Matt and I are very similar, I think when we're focused, we don't want to sit around and take forever to do something. I think we want the velocity in our decisions. So I will turn over to Matt and see his response.
And again, thank you. And again, I hate to keep saying I'm new here. I'll probably say that, in 5 years.
Oh my.
It's a great strategy. Anyway, so what I've been told from our DCD, our Department of Community Development, which is where all the planning and zoning and whatnot occurs, is that there's this comprehensive plan that is, renewed periodically. I think it's coming up for that renewal, that looks at the whole city. And of course, it's not staff that does this, but it's planning commission and council. But it has a lot of, but statutorily, it requires input from stakeholders from the community and, the residents and whatnot. So I think that's the process, is as we're coming around the corner to re-look at our comprehensive plan, to just get involved in that through it's a normal course. So I think you've had plenty of conversation with Barry on that. Anyway, so yeah, that's all I know really, is that there's a process for that. I tell you, the other thing I'm seeing is that I think California's already done it. I think Oregon's already done it. If the cities don't do it, the state's doing it, right? They're just saying, I think California's already said that any place that is zoned for single family, they can put multiple family on that. They just took it away from all municipalities, and it's a state mandate now. So, and I'm not a believer in that. I think government should be run locally and with the community's involvement. But it's that big a deal around the country, of course.
So Matt, if I can, hate to put him on the spot, but Josh Huish is the lobbyist for the North Olympic Legislative Alliance, which is Clallam and Jefferson counties. And we have a steering committee, which Sequim sits on. He is right in the middle of all these discussions, of course. And so, Josh, I don't know if you could give us an update. I know there was a bill that was, and I think it was sponsored by the governor, to prevent single family dwellings in city limits. Josh, can you, if he's listening, can you give us any information about that?
Yeah, good morning, Colleen, and hi everyone. I'm here.
Don't you love it? I just
Well,
put you on the hot seat without.
I suspected that you might call me Colleen. It's okay. It's nice to see you. Nice to see everyone. Yeah, so this has been fascinating to hear the conversation on Sequim's thinking so far, the new mayor and Matthew, we are thinking on the missing middle. There are two bills the governor has put forward. They are both still moving ahead. I was going to scrambling to look up the bill numbers here. They both have gotten out of their committee of origin, their policy committee, before tomorrow's cutoff when bills will start to die. And it's been a really ugly conversation, because as Mr. Huish, mentioned, it is a mandate type of approach. It's a top-down state telling every local government above 10,000 in population that they have to allow duplexes on any in any zone where single-family dwellings are allowed currently. If you're over 20,000, there's additional requirements around transit, high-capacity transit. And it's been, I think the biggest thing that has been frustrating about it is that the governor's office, dropped these ideas, and the proponents dropped these ideas without any consultation with cities at all. And, being part of the lobbying crew that's working on behalf of cities trying to slow this down. The proponents really aren't listening, aren't interested in cities' perspective. They're basically going to do this over top of the objection. So, but it's all based on the premise that, if you open up zoning, that the market will just respond, that the significant part of the housing problem right now is that there's not land available to build missing middle types of units, which is partially true. But we also know in jurisdictions that have done this, and there are a number of jurisdictions across the state that have allowed these types of developments and have opened this up already to missing middle. The market hasn't responded. It's not like those parcels now all of a sudden become cheaper. In fact, the reality is those parcels become more expensive because you can build more units on them. And we haven't seen additional units come online from these types of land use actions. So I think, as Mayor Ferrell mentioned, it's going to have to be a number of actions, and making mandating cities to take these zoning actions and thinking it's going to be a panacea, I think, is really ill-advised. So that's kind of the conversation in Olympia right now around the missing middle, and it's been pretty brutal. Continues to be pretty brutal.
Interesting. I noted Pat McCauley's comment. Pat, do you want to add? It's a good point, I think.
Well, actually, my business is hospitality, lodging, destinations. And we see constantly single-family homes being sucked up into the VRBO and Airbnb space. And so Seattle added additional units. So a lot can have 2 additional units, and saw most of those also sucked up into the Airbnb space. And the average rent on that is 70 days a year. So for the rest of the year, those units sit empty. And I see that danger happening in Sequim. Sequim has an enormous amount of vacation rentals, not in vacation places. I live on Three Crabs, and a lot of these houses are vacation rentals, and it's understandable. But when they're downtown on the corner of 5th and Hendrickson, there's a lovely little house that's a Airbnb. I think it's $80 a night, which could be a single family home. I mean, it's really sad to see this happening. And all through town, there's these cute little houses that are starter homes. And you're looking for middle market. You don't need middle market. You need starter homes. And those are the ones being sucked up and sold as Airbnbs and then modernized and cute. And then they're not starter homes anymore. So my thing is I'm all for the multifamily thing, as long as there's restrictions to at least 30 days occupancy. So that can't happen. Do you see that possibility?
I was going to say the other thing that you see in communities that are ahead of us that, you know, have already hit this curve and are taking it on is there's really oftentimes a breakdown in the community that existed before, you know, neighbors knowing neighbors, and that, you know, you just got to be careful. I know the Oregon coast really kind of lost its personal charm as it just blew up into Airbnbs and some of those things. So there's a lot of factors that council policymakers need to, you know, consider as they move into these waters. It's really, those are hard decisions. So.
Where, if I could say one more thing, I've always thought Sequim would be a perfect market for courtyard kind of communities, and I didn't really realize in my naivete that those things weren't allowed. Okay. And that one of the charming things when you look at old California movies are these wonderful courtyards, community where everybody knows each other. And it's the same with duplexes and townhomes. So I'm all for that kind of stuff. If we could actually do it, I think it would be good for our community.
So I saw that Mike McAleer had a question. Dad, do you want to ask your question?
No, I'll go with the way I stated it.
Oh, okay, so I can go ahead and read it. Does the city of Sequim have a position on the waste management proposed develop in Carlsberg? What is the impact for Sequim? Are there alternatives? I understand from one of the business owners that's next to it that they've got over 200 people that have signed a petition saying don't put the I think it's a transfer station there at that location. And obviously it's a county issue, not a city of Sequim issue, but it would certainly serve the citizens of Sequim. Do you have a position on that at all? Or any thoughts there that you want to add? And obviously it would be a personal position, I think, Tom, because you're not speaking on behalf of the council, but any thoughts on that?
At this point, no, I'm certainly aware of it. And Matt, has there been discussion within the staff on this?
Yeah, so I think that facility has to drop into a industrial zone or something like that, or heavy industrial zone. I don't think we have that in our comprehensive plan, is my understanding. So I mean, that could be changed, but there's not a good place for that. I know they've been looking at, can they bring it over and put it in Sequim somewhere, but other than right along the freeway or the gateway, you know, into our town, I don't think there's a convenient location for that. We're small. I'm surprised how small Sequim really, the boundaries really are. So anyway, that's my understanding. I'd need to ask Barry about that.
All right. Let's see. Oh, Marco Zayas wrote, sorry, I need to head to another meeting. Hearing for the proposed transfer facility is tomorrow. Details can be found at clallam.net. Type conditional use permit into the search function. And so I see Caleb McMahon has a question. Caleb's the Director of Economic Development at the Port of Port Angeles. Caleb.
Hi, Colleen. Hello, everyone. I hate to kind of kick a dead horse here, but, you know, kind of going down the housing conversation, which I think really is the linchpin of our community going forward. You know, I know Colleen and I are very aware of some of the economic successes that we're having here, but we're also worried about kind of it collapsing under our own economic weight for the fact that we don't have housing for the workforce that we are recruiting businesses to come here for. So I've been looking at studies over the last couple of weeks, and the housing shortage is very prevalent, not just in PA, as everyone was saying, all across the country. But another thing, it's even more prevalent in Kitsap and the I-5 corridor, and that seems to be sucking up all of the money and attention, so to speak. So you can't get a lot of people interested in this area. One thing that I've done in the past, or worked on projects in the past, is building capital stacks out of things like new market tax credits, try to look at some of these USDA RISE grants, HUD monies, and building them out of a capital stack in such a way where you can set up an investment vehicle where you can get some of these developers interested. It's a lot more difficult, but it's more of a plug and play model that you can actually entice people with. I was just curious, as a city thought about it, anything like that, trying to move the ball, down the court, so to speak.
This is Tom. I whenever you're dealing with basically citizens' taxpayer money, you've got to be careful when you look at these issues. And I am open to anything relative to what makes sense. I haven't heard in detail any of these potentials, but I understand the financing capability could exist. Matt, have you had discussions with that at all with?
Well, no, you're right, Caleb. There's a lot of things out there. We don't have the depth. I'm just learning here at the city. We have 87 employees. So, and they all have really busy day jobs. Matter of fact, I'm not used to people wearing so many hats, so we don't really have somebody that's just out, that's skilled in grants and pursuing some of this. We've talked about it. I think it would be a great return on investment, meaning whatever we paid a salary for someone like that I assume they would bring in 3x, 5x of that salary in money to the city. But again, it's a new concept, and I don't know how Sequim feels about that. So at this point, we don't have that level of position or sophistication to do that. It doesn't mean it can't happen. I think it needs to happen. Matter of fact, with some of this ARPA money, this federal money, I've had several conversations with our director of finance, and I said, even if we have to, I can see that you guys are all stretched just doing your day job, but we've there's so much money out there that we're being flooded with. Some of those state representatives or whatever will be able to talk about this more, and I think it's speaking of tsunamis, where we started this conversation, it is a wave, and I don't think it will be here after 3 to 5 years. There's a lot of availability, and I'm thinking about either, if we can't or don't want to hire an FTE for that, maybe we contract out for that specialty, somebody that does that as a day job that can alert us to what we can apply for or what we need to do in a contract relationship. So it's out there. We just don't have that in the city right now.
Well, I said the port would be or myself, I would be happy to have conversations with you in any way I can help with that. So
I would love, let's talk afterwards and offline. I'd love to meet with you about that.
Sure.
This is Tom. Just one more comment. I'd love to see a best practices model for towns our size. And Colleen, have EDCs ever taken on an arm to consider helping cities with that?
Some EDCs have done that. And I've got some people writing grants right now on our behalf that are part-time employees, project-based employees. And I've been, a couple of years ago when COVID first hit, I thought it would be a good idea to have one person that directed, hey, there's a new grant program, and it would fit really well with this nonprofit in the community or this municipality. And, having some grant writers that were available with a pot of money to go after that. So it was a fairly organized process. It just, in the grand scheme of things, getting things done, it didn't bubble up to the top. We were much more reactive, I think. But I think eventually that would be a good way to tackle some of this. I wanted to add, there is a document that I'm just uploading into the chat right now that it's a 145 page document, but it was just produced by the White House that goes through all the different funding opportunities that are out there right now and how to get them and what they're for. It's a really good document. Good. It loaded. It's there. If anyone wants to download it, we'll also have it on our website. But you know, it'll go through and talk about what's available and how competitive it is and who can apply for it, that funding. So anyway, just sharing that as a resource. Next question, if it's all right, I'm going to move on to, it looks like Jim Stoffer was next with a question. Jim?
Yes, hi, good morning. Tom and Matt, I'm wearing just my individual school board hat, same as the individual person on the city council. We have the same form of government where there's 5, and we all have, we come together and work in discussions in public. So a lot of the work here is about relationships building. And Matt, I heard you say the city is so small. Well, you sit smack dab in the Sequim Dungeness Valley, which actually goes into Jefferson County. So it's more of a comment. It's about working together with all those partners from the school district, our tribal partners, OMC, the Chamber of Commerce, Colleen, who's right above you in the Hollywood Squares with the Habitat. And all those problems from housing to economic development affected everybody here. Those of us that live in the Sequim Dungeness Valley, we don't call ourselves Clallamites, we call ourselves Sequimanites. And so it's having those conversations, relationships. Also, I'm the legislative rep for the school district, and for this region, I represent Clallam, Jefferson, Kitsap, and North Mason. So I know I've been feeding you guys a lot of legislative on public education stuff. And so that's where we can partner together and work together. So welcome. And everybody's a new person at one time or another, and we all have to put on our boots and step up and start moving forward for the good of the whole community. So thank you here. It's not really a question, more of a comment. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks.
This is Tom. I'm 73 years old. I'm not a new person, but so I get that. I think one of the things that's really important in San Diego, I came from San Diego, and then before that, Sacramento, is a regional attitude. When I came here and got into planning commission, that regional thinking didn't go away. But I think as this city evolves and the peninsula evolves, if you don't have a regional attitude, you're going to miss some boats on this situation. So I heartily support that. One thing I wanted to mention, just so you all know me better, I'm kind of a guy that doesn't like to do deficit spending. And when I see the money, the federal monies that are out there and the state monies, Colleen, you and I worked together helping small business, which was very valid. I want everyone to understand that when you apply for federal money, that is deficit spending. The money, the tax base we have is still not being sufficient to cover the expenditures we're having in this country. So while I want my share of that federal money, I think it's important to understand that we are part of a national situation too, relative to debt. And that will have an influence and effect on society as we go forward too. That's my only conservative comment I will make.
I understand. I hear you. If the money's being appropriated though, and it's going to be spent, I want to make sure our community gets as much of it as we can. I mean, if, you know, and I understand, I worry about inflation. It's obviously impacting all of us. And I know a lot of that is tied to the the appropriations that the federal government has made. But once it's made, I want to make sure if we can do it, Clallam County gets more than our fair share, or at least our fair share. And I think in the past, I know in the past, our county has not. So we got to turn that around. Let's see, next question that was there was from Michael Smith, I believe. Michael?
Okay. Well, it just was a question about urban growth areas having waste management or waste transfer stations in the middle of them. You know, it just doesn't seem to fit. There's so much unincorporated county and so much Clallam County that is not urban growth area or city limits. It just seems like a transfer station. I mean, it'd be very convenient for me since I live in Carlsbad, but I feel for the business owners that would be right next to it or within smell or hearing of it. And I just feel like there's some more wide open spaces where that could go without plopping it right in the middle of an urban growth area. And I've got some other issues with that urban growth area and housing density and stuff that was proposed earlier right across the street from my house. But that's not the issue here. But waste transfer station just sounds like could be a mile or two either direction somewhere else. And that was just my concern.
Gotcha. Thank you, Michael. Next is Roy. Roy, you have a question? Roy Morris? Roy? Oh, I don't hear Roy. So, and I know
Roy's
somebody
on
else.
mute.
Okay.
Again. Okay, now say again.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are, Roy. Go ahead.
I'm a friend of Frank Hansen's who worked at the Olympic Natural Resource Center for decades, and he and I collaborated on many projects. And he directed me to this group to get some insights about our natural resources jobs collaborative that we're producing here around the West End to try to increase educational opportunities and workforce capacity so that we'll be able to host more of the grant dollars that we have for natural resource work and infrastructure development. We're working at Peninsula College on curriculum at the Forks branch. As well, I am retired from the Office of Field Studies at Western Washington University, where I helped produce the work on that $6 million grant when Intalco and Georgia Pacific went down in Bellingham. Reconfiguring educational programs is my background. I helped produce Running Start and many other programs like that for the state. Working out here as a retired school principal from Clallam Bay and Nia Bay and such, I'm just trying to learn what you're doing in the Sequim area. And I worked on the MRCs and the Marine Sanctuary Advisory Committees and the Olympic National Park Advisory Science Committees. And in that, we always are seeing wonderful people come here that are helping us, but we are not doing enough as a past principal of high school here to help local people find their pathways forward to being qualified for those jobs. So that's what we're working on. And we're developing programs at the Forks branch. So anyone that is interested in contributing to our jobs development program at Forks could contact me. I'm Roy Morris, able@olipen.com. And I'd like to have further conversations. We hope to create a different sense of product here on the West End rather than harvest and extraction, which now after the trees are gone, they're going after substrate and then water sequestering for distribution of fresh water around the Pacific Rim. Instead of going down those roads, we hope to go into a natural resources research and create one of the world destinations for scientific research using all the assets we have in our ecosystems here. So anyone that wants to help with a project like that, as well as senior care and development of housing for refugees from the urban areas that are coming out west here. You guys have done a good job in Sequim.
Great. Thanks, Roy. Why don't you put your email address in the chat for everyone, and then they could contact you that way.
Thank you very much, Colleen, and a very nice hosting of this affair. I'm glad to have sat in and I'm learning a lot.
Well, great. Thank you. All right. So let's see. Chuck, Mo, you have your hand up.
There we go. I had to get my mic unmuted. Sorry about that. Hey, good morning, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, Chuck Moe, I'm the Assistant Business Manager with Labor's Local 252. We have an office in Port Angeles. We cover quite a bit of the coast itself, but I'm also the President of the Olympic Peninsula Building Trades up here. We have roughly 16 affiliates. Mayor Ferrell and City Manager Huish, just keep in mind anything we can do to help as you move forward with some of these relationship buildings. Jim Stouffer hit the nail on the head. Being part of the community, growing in the community, creating those relationships is huge. You guys, everyone in this room knows this. I see a lot of familiar names, but anything we can do to help, give us a shout. We're pretty involved statewide, 16 different affiliates. We got a lot of power right up in the Sequim, Carlsbad, Port Angeles area. I know just the laborers alone have close to 100 members that work up there. City of Port Angeles years ago put in apprenticeship utilization requirements on their projects. We increased our apprentices 10 times the amount of apprentices within 1 year of them doing so, creating jobs. 90% of those individuals have journeyed out, made full long-term relationships, but just know we're out there. We got a lot of boots in the ground. I'm just one craft. I'll put my contact information in the chat. If we can help you out in any way, give me a shout.
Well, that's great, Josh. I'm sorry, Chuck. You know, we've been working on and giving input, trying to give input to these apprenticeship bills because we generally, I mean, we've got a lot of contractors in our county, but not that many that are union. And so, you know, we just have not had many apprentices out here that are part of the formal apprenticeship program. And with the non-union apprenticeship program, CITC, the closest location being Marysville, there's just been very little opportunity for people in our communities to be part of the apprenticeship programs that are so exceptional. And I would love to learn more about what is actually here in our community and make sure that that's open to as many students as possible. I know of many people that want to be apprentices in our communities, but they either, you know, it's so competitive, they haven't been able to get into it. And then also have, of course, the business that hires them, because we just don't have many that are local. When I talked to some folks at the IBEW, International, I can't remember what it stands for, but electrical workers, they said, well, you really just need to move to Seattle if you want to be an apprentice, an electrical apprentice. So, you know, and we've been trying to work with LNI and legislators to explain, we want to be a part of this program, but if, you know, if people haven't been able to break into it and they're told move in order to be part of that system. So we want to do what we can to make it work for people in Clallam County. So thanks for putting your information in the chat. And I am going to follow up with you on this. This is one issue that our lobbyist has been, you know, trying to work on with us so that we can expand apprenticeships locally. And you said it grew 10 times, but was that for people that lived in Clallam County?
That was just in Port Angeles, just the city of Port Angeles. You know, currently looking through Clallam County, and I can't speak for all the trades, but off the cuff, if you look at IBW electricians, you look at operators, you look at laborers, you look at Teamsters, just the key heavy industrial. I mean, there's no way we don't have 300 current apprentices in Clallam County right now throughout those trades. You know, but we very seldom get much outreach. You know, I will give the Sequim School District kudos. They brought us in twice before COVID to do work with their job fairs, and we've had some great applicants from that program. I know I have 2 Sequim high school graduates currently in the apprenticeship program. But we have a hard time getting in the schools to get our names out, to get our information out there. You guys, you guys see all the individuals that work in that area, Interwest, ICI, Brook and Brook, Lakeside, Sean Canepa, Concrete. There's a huge list of contractors that are signatory to our apprenticeship programs in your area. Several of those contractors I just mentioned have offices in Sequim or Carlsberg, and tons of work up in that area. Scarcella Brothers. I can go on for 3 minutes on the contractors up there that have relationships with us. But
are they hiring though? So that the folks I've worked with, they have been applying and just haven't been able to get anywhere. So I would love to talk to you and explore that a little more offline. Yeah, that's great. I'm so glad you're here on the call. It's kind of a little bit off topic, but I really appreciate it. So let's see, 8:52. Does anyone else have anything that they want to ask of the Sequim mayor or our new city manager?
Let me just say that I appreciate Jim's comments. I'm a collaborator from forever. I get that you have to network and work together, particularly in a rural setting and stuff. So I appreciate you reaching out, Jim. I think we've shared some emails and whatnot. So I know that, there's a tribe, there's a county, there's school district. Certainly, matter of fact, I had to submit a business plan in my interviewing process, and in my first 6 months, it was, to start making those connections to get out and meet all of the invested entities in the area, so that we could figure out to make sure that we're collaborating together. So thank you for that.
So Michael Smith had another couple of good questions about, does the city, I know the city did a lot of work about the corner piece that the city owns at the corner of Sequim Avenue and Washington Street at the, what is that, northeast corner there, that used to be a gas station right next to over the fence. And what came out of that? What is the status of that piece of property?
Are you updated on that, Matthew?
I'm not.
No.
I don't know about that property.
Yeah.
Tom, do you know? Or Barbara? Great.
I can give you a quick update on that. I just turn my camera on. So that's part of the Sequim Understory project. That is a joint parks and arts program to creative placemaking in that space. So there was a survey that went out and we got over 200 responses to that. That information has been tabulated. Staff has had one meeting, but we've had some staff turnover. And I think that was one of Michael's questions. We have a new Parks and Facilities Manager, Hannah Merrill, and we have a new arts coordinator that's going to be starting on February 22nd. So once we get those key people in place and get their feet settled a little bit, we will be meeting again as staff to start looking at what our next steps are. We've talked about some potential ways that we take that information from the survey and get that into schematics, because I think that's probably the next step. We just haven't had the right people in place to do that. So we kind of slowed the project down a little bit, but it's still there. We're still really excited about it, and you should be hearing more about it in the near future.
Okay, great. Thanks, Barbara. And then, so one thing I want to add is that as the designated economic development entity for our county, we receive leads from the state on a regular basis, and they're always really lucrative opportunities where these companies are well financed. They pay very high wages. They're innovative. They're green, because that's the green. The state has that as a metric that they look for. 9 times out of 10, we can't meet the minimum requirements because our county doesn't have rail. But in that 10% that we do, they almost always require heavy industrial heavy industrial zones. And we're talking about companies like Carbon, which we've had on here, that take the slash from forests that are being managed and harvested, and then create biochar out of them, that they're going to invest $100 million in a facility and create biochar, which is really good for the soil, and then also create 10 megawatts of power as an example. But they need 35 acres of heavy industrially zoned property that's contiguous. And so that has been a huge challenge for them in Clallam County, though they really feel like they've got great relationships and they want to do something here. But there's no zoning in the city anywhere that would allow for that. That would create high wage jobs. It's green, but it'd be something that needs to be, I get you don't want to put it at the corner of Sequim and Highway 101 because they do have outside and materials, and there would be a lot of truck traffic and that kind of thing. So when I've looked at the high technology, low industrial zones and the EOA zones, none of those zones allow for the kind of opportunities that are always presented from the state. And I'm wondering if that is something that could be looked at in the future at your next comp plan review. Is there an area within the city limits that might fit for that kind of use? I know you got the titanium company, Chris, I've forgotten his last name, that runs that. Is there some, then you've always got the NIMBYs, though, the not in my backyard kind of reaction that you've got to consider. But is that something at the next comp plan that the council might be interested in taking a look at? Because that's where the opportunities lie for communities, counties like ours.
This is Tom. I think Matt mentioned about our city limits. It's not that we have a 35-acre space available, but I think it would depend on the footprint and the output, the noise levels, a lot of things, a lot of environmental factors that we would have to consider in our community. So I think it would have to be something we would take a look at, but it would have to fit relative to many characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Well, I
only
think it'd be
briefly,
good to consider.
And that's my opinion, by the way. So.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I've only briefly looked at the, citywide zoning and whatnot, but I was told by our IT manager, Anthony, that part of that plan is, I think there's some parcels on both ends for high tech businesses, whatever that means. And I'm not sure of the actual zoning for that, but trying to invite or encourage, that industry to the market. So I don't.
My experience has been trying to get those high tech kind of jobs. They say, those CEOs say, well, do you have the existing supply chain? Do you have the existing workforce? And unfortunately, the answer is no.
Right.
So, having the zoning like that hasn't meant that they, obviously, proof's in the pudding, we haven't been able to attract those, even though we certainly have pursued them.
This
Go
is
ahead.
Tom. There might be a higher desire now. I know a lot of companies and so on are trying to get out of heavy metropolitan areas, so I'm sure you're aware of that. But we might have a workforce issue and a housing issue. So does Seattle, so does Los Angeles. So maybe there's a marketing opportunity there to keep an eye on relative to getting a attractiveness in a small community for high-tech industry.
Great. All right. Well, thank you. And it looks like we are right at 9. Steve, I will contact you about your comment. I'm pretty familiar with the whole thing, so I'll talk to you about that. But I would really like to thank both Matt and Mayor Tom Ferrell, for joining us today. We really appreciate you coming on and answering questions and allowing people to have a conversation with you. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
We will have the recording up on our website later on today.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.